Anybody have any questions or thoughts about it? I can introduce them. Our first speaker is actually going to be Stephan Simonian, who has been the great motivator, host for this conference today. And Stephan had completed his medical school in Shiraz, Iran. And after he finished his military service, he came to the United States and did his psychiatric residency program in New York Medical College, Metropolitan Hospital Center. He also did training in psychoanalytic practice in the same college and did his own psychoanalytic training. He also completed 3 years of child and adolescent psychiatry as a subspecialty. He lived in Boston for many, many years, working in private practice in a local hospital. And for several years, he was the chief of a department of psychiatry of a local psychiatry hospital called Whitensville. So he's trained in psychiatric room therapy with Dr. Mort Herskovitz, who is one of Reich's more well-known people who succeeded him. Mort lived to be 100 and trained many people across the country. Great man also, who's written also on orgonomy. Dr. Simonian also translated the book, The Function of Orgasm, to Persian, as well as the book Reich Speaks of Freud. He moved here to California in around 2002 and started his private practice of psychiatry. He is affiliated with Glendale Adventist Hospital, and he's also a member of the Institute for Orgonomic Science, one of the professional organizations that pursues orgonomic work. He's also a board-certified psychiatrist and publishes a journal that's online, the Journal of Psychiatric Organotherapy, where articles are regularly presented from different people here and across the planet, actually. Thankfully, the field of orgonomy has managed to stay alive these many years, mostly because of the efforts of all the people who eventually have come to teach and learn about his work. So I know one of our speakers, Patricia Estrada, who's in the audience, has connections with people in many, many countries on the planet, Brazil, Ecuador, Israel, certainly in Europe, other parts of Central America, as well as Mexico. And that's a very, for us, exciting development to see that there are still pockets of people, individuals concerned and interested in his work. I myself came to know of Reich after I had worked as a singer and had been taking part of a therapy workshop in which Reichian techniques were used, therapy techniques, and it was a very intense experience. And I'd known Reich's name because my father would speak about him, and my father was a psychiatrist, so we had his books at home. So when I really started learning about him, I'd never heard of most of his life story. And I think it's still a relatively unknown story for most people across the planet. I was so impressed, I ended up changing careers in order to continue doing the research. So, Stephan, I know I'm a little ahead of schedule.
No, it's okay.
Do you want to start?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Now that I do have a little bit more time, I will tell you how did I come to the Reich, to know the Reich. When I came from Iran here to do residency training in psychiatry, I was alone. In Iran, people have an extensive family support, life support, cousins and relatives. So when we came here, we were alone, and I had 2 very little children, and insecurity and not knowing what's going to happen. So I was myself a little depressed, and in addition, the branch that I signed for psychiatry it was very difficult because I never could figure out when I'm right, when I'm wrong. For one supervisor, oh, I shouldn't have said this to the patient. For the other one, you should have said that for the patient. And there was no really scientific base upon which I could decide what to do with the patient. Everyone had their own idea. And I was very depressed. I didn't know that whether I'm going to make it, I will be able to be a specialist to claim that I know what I'm doing. So, in that depressed and hopeless state, one day I was in second year of residency training, I think. I was roaming around in the library. I saw a book by name of Reich Speaks of Freud. I pulled that book. I started to reading it, and it was like a breeze of a fresh weather, fresh air. I was so impressed that I realized this man knows what he's talking about. He was not talking like maybe yes or no. He was just black and white. This is the way, and he was talking scientifically. I sensed myself that I wanted to say what he's saying, but I'm unable to. So after that, I became very impressed by it. I read more of the books, but no one really in the institute and the hospital that I was working, residency training, knew about Reich. Anything that we said, they, brushed it away. So I studied Reich secretly, in fact. And gradually, but I knew he knows what he's talking about, and that's the way that we have to progress. So after that, I translated one of his books, Function of Orgasm, to Persian language, Iranian language, and it's published. And one is here. You can see here the translated book, and it is available in Iran. And as actually one of the speakers that were supposed to come today from Iran and talk got impressed and by reading that book in Iran and following it. But unfortunately, he was not granted visa, but we will read his statement that I think scheduled for today sometime. Anyhow, so I just progressed, and I eventually found the museum, Reich's Museum. The picture is over there. That's the Reich's Museum over there, if you can see in the Rangeley, Maine. It's a very nice place, serene, it's a beautiful place, a small town. And at that time, Mary Higgins was the trustee of the Reich Institute, and he was making some conferences. In one of the conferences, I saw Dr. Herskovich. His picture should be, that's his picture, that's Herskovich's picture. Yeah. So he died recently, maybe a few years ago. He was Reich's last student. So at that time, Reich was not alive, so you can read the books, but you have to actually experiment the treatment that he provides to see the difference, because I already had gone through psychoanalysis, Freudian psychoanalysis myself, and although I learned a lot about myself, but I knew that I'm sane, I haven't changed. So I knew that it will be difficult for me to continue in the profession that I have with some of the characterological problems that I had then. I'm sorry, one second. Irene? Is Irene here? And two gentlemen are coming in, so, okay. This is the, come right in. This is Stephan. Please, come in, have a seat there. Okay. Hello. Please, come, have a seat. Or over there are two chairs. Okay. Anyhow, so I was looking for someone who can provide a psychiatric organ therapy, because Reichian psychoanalysis is different, the approach is different, technique is different, theory is a little different. So fortunately, in one of the summer conferences that Mary Higgins at that time was making in that center, I met Dr. Herskovich, and Dr. Herskovich at that time was in Philadelphia. I was in Boston already. So it was 6 hours drive, but I knew I had to have it. I had to have that type of treatment. So every 2 weeks I was traveling to there and having the technique and the treatment by Dr. Herskovich, and I realized how impressive, how powerful this technique is. So I went for many years, and I'm very happy that I had that chance to have that type of the treatment, and also had the psychoanalytic treatment, and I could compare both of them. So yeah, actually I will tell you a quick story, then I will read what I have written here. While I was going to Philadelphia every 2 weeks, and I was a resident, I was just finished residency training, it was lots of time and money, and Herskovich was seeing me Mondays, so I had to go from the Boston Saturday night to go to Monday and have a whole Monday, because he was giving me 2 hours, and then I was coming back, so I had to pay the hotel when I was going there. I had to pay him for the analysis for 2 hours, and then I was missing 1 day, the whole day Monday, for working, and so it was lots of financial, but I knew I had to do that sacrifice, and it was well worth it. So one day Dr. Herskovich told me about his experience with Reich, because Reich was his analyst. Herskovich was Reich's student. He says that while he was driving to Maine, Rangeley, Maine, to see Reich every 2 weeks or so, while he was driving there, Dr. Reich once told him how long it takes for you to drive from Philadelphia to here, Rangeley. Herskovich was young, and at that time said 8 hours. He said, "At what 8 hours? It takes 8 hours to drive from New York to here. From Philadelphia, it should take 2 more hours, because it's 2 more hours away." And Herskovich at that time a little bragged and said that, "Well, I drive a little fast and whatever." So then Reich says that, "Well, it is something to endanger your life. It is something else to endanger other people's lives. So from now on, either come 10 hours or don't bother coming." So and then Herskovich said that he was getting there on the weekends. So I came and told my wife that Herskovich said this. My wife says, "What? Van Reich was seeing Herskovich on weekends, so he should see you on weekends too. So you will have Mondays to work, you know."
That's right.
So I went to Herskovich. I said that, "Well, since Reich was seeing you on weekends, you also should see me on weekends." And he agreed. So that was a great thing. Okay, so let me now read for you the real stuff. Well, Orgonomy is discovered and funded by Wilhelm Reich. Can we put the first slide?
Yes.
Wilhelm Reich. Yeah, this is my topic of my talk, the theory of orgone and beyond. And the next one, do you have the next one?
Sure.
Well, anyhow, while you are looking, that was the picture of Dr. Reich. His picture is over there. I just wanted to know the thing. Do you want to bring the computer? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is right. No, this is Freud. Okay, this is the next slide. Reich was a student of Freud. Freud was the founder of psychoanalysis. So Reich in the book of Function of Orgasm says, "I spent 14 years of intensive work in and for psychoanalysis, but at the end I was extremely disappointed in Freud." Later on, when I'm talking, we will know why Reich was disappointed in Freud. Orgonomy grew in the womb of psychoanalysis, but mainly from the living nerve of psychoanalysis of libido theory. While Freud's students talked less and less about the libido theory, Reich recognized significance of libido theory, the theory of energy, which led him to discovery of organ energy. Orgonomy defines health and sickness of human organism based on the orderly functioning and flow of biological energy organ. Now, in teaching of the medical students, they usually teach the first year normal physiology and anatomy, because a student who wants to become a doctor first have to know what is normal, and then know what is the pathology or sickness, and then knows the treatment. So I thought that we can use that same method here and first discuss what is a normal orgonomic structure from orgonomic point of view. The orgonomy is the only discipline that is able to define the normal human functioning based on scientific and logical functioning of human organism, which biologically determined. In other words, there's no definition of what is normal psychological functioning. Every culture defines it based on their own way. Every religion defines it in its own way. So there is no basic scientific description of what is normal. For one religion, killing an infidel is a normal. I mean, that's the way a person should be. For the other religion, there is something else. So orgonomy is the only branch in psychology and medicine that defines human psyche based on what physiologically normal human being should be. While in psychoanalysis, all human altruistic behavior is considered to be sublimation of perverted unconscious impulses, orgonomy goes beyond the unconscious to the deeper level of biological and bioenergetic core of human organism. While psychology and psychiatry confines itself to helping individuals to cope with the cultural norms prevailing in the society, orgonomy is the only discipline that dictates that the culture and social values and social institutions should adapt to physiological and natural needs of human structure. Actually, the proof of the fact that psychology tries to hey, doctor. Good morning. Actually, the proof that psychology tries to help the person to cope with the environment, whatever the rules and regulations of the environment is. In orgonomy, we dictate that the environment should adapt itself to what is normal and what is human being ordained to be. The proof of this distorted view of psychology and psychiatry can be found in different statements given by the leaders in these disciplines. For example, in the book of Psychoanalytic Treatment of Children, written by Anna Freud says, in working with adults, we have to confine ourselves entirely to helping people to adapt himself to the environment. It is far from us and in fact quite outside of our intention or our means to shape his surroundings to meet his needs. Now, translating this description to medical terms will mean that if a patient is suffering from malnutrition because of starvation and lack of food, the doctor should help the patient to adjust to starvation and lack of food rather than addressing the social shortcoming of starvation and lack of food. Sociological branch of orgonomy starts from this point of view because orgonomy naturally then affects that demands changes in society. Sociological branch of orgonomy starts from this point of view, demanding social and cultural institutions to adapt to the children and adolescents, and for that reason, for everyone's needs, that physiological needs. Now, to understand the normal functioning of the human organism from orgonomic point of view, we look into the functioning of primitive organisms. The animal body, in the very lower stage of the development, possesses an apparatus that generates electricity from center. This structure and function persist in developed stage. These centers are called so-called vegetative ganglions, a collection of nerve cells. They are arranged. I'm sorry. Yeah, please come. Oh, Mr. Stephan here. Okay. These centers are called vegetative ganglions, a collection of nerve cells. They are arranged at regular intervals and can connect with all of the organs by means of fine strands which governs the involuntary life function. This autonomic nervous system has two branches, sympathetic and parasympathetic. They induce contraction and expansion in the regular rhythmic way. Feeling of pleasure is associated with parasympathetic function, and the parasympathetic function of expansion, and the feeling of non-pleasure or anxiety is associated with the function of sympathetic branch of contraction. Now, the capacity of human organism to expand and contract fully without inhibition and to regulate this pulsating energy by proper production and proper discharge of surplus energy by orgasmic convulsion is the foundation upon which the concept of health and sickness are determined in orgonomy. So in orgonomy, we consider an organism healthy when this energy pulsates from the center to the periphery and flows to the periphery in unimpeded way, and the excess energy is discharged fully. Now, one of the major ways to discharge is orgastic function. In orgonomy, the centers that produce the pulsatory energy identified as vegetative ganglions. Reich says, in the abdominal region, so-called the seat of emotions, we find generators of biophysical energy. They are large centers of autonomic nervous system, essentially the solar plexus, hypogastric plexus, and lumbosacral plexus. Now, there's a diagram that schematically shows it. If we can show the next one. Next slide. The next one. Yeah, this one. This is the center that produces the impulses, and it expands and goes to the periphery, and then it causes expansion and then contraction, which is through sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. This is a basic function of vegetative nervous system. Now, this is one of the principles of orgonomy, the physiologic, how the body works, the living organism works. Now, a paper, there is not that much research have been done in the physiology about making scientific proof of it, but there is a paper written by a physiologist by name of Zamitina in Journal of Physiology in USSR at that time, 1961, that corroborates these findings.
How do you spell that, Dr. Simonian?
Can you show the next slide? It's difficult because it's old paper. If you can bring the next slide. Yeah, this is it. That's the paper that this paper somehow corroborates with what Reich says about the pulsation, pulsatory energy emitting from the center to the periphery, from the ganglion, central ganglions to the periphery. Now, in orgonomy, we also recognize the functional existence of segmental structure. See, in the lower animals, there's a segmental structure, like worm, like snake. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah, there's a segmental structure and the movement, segmental movement. This segmental movement, the pulse, wavy movement, also exists in the higher animals, but it is not conspicuous. You cannot see it like as it's in the world, but the flow of energy is this way.
And peristalsis.
Peristalsis, that's right. You can. It exists in the guts, in the intestine. You know. So in orgonomy, we also recognize the existence of segmental structure, which is conspicuous in lower animals like worm and snake. The wavy movement from head to tail. This orgonomic movement persists in human organism, but is not as conspicuous. Now, orgonomy also recognizes that the various organs in the body have their own pulsations. Each organ independently of the total organism forms a living unit of its own, having perception and the ability to react to stimulus. However, they also integrate to the whole body and become a whole through the organism. Therefore, from orgonomic point of view, a healthy body constitutes a bioenergetic core that we mentioned there, bioenergetic core, which generates biophysical energy, orgone, by pulsation and unimpeded flow of this energy from inner ganglions toward the periphery, from center to periphery, and in undulating wavy movement from head to pelvis. The energy is constantly produced from inside toward outside. The excess energy in a normal human organism, like any other living organism, is fully discharged most effectively by orgastic convulsions. An organism that produces adequate energy from inside, from within, by pulsation, pulsating energy propagates to the periphery by vegetative nervous system, unimpeded, and excess energy is discharged fully, orgonomically is considered to be healthy organism. So we describe here what a healthy organism is and how a healthy organism is ordained to be. In such a balanced energetic situation, the organism is considered to be healthy. The orgastic function as the regulator to adjust this energy, excess energy, is a universal function that all living organisms, including a single cell, sharing, and that regulation consists in them as well. That is why the function of orgasm in orgonomy has gained such an importance. If a cell division is based on orgastic convulsions, then who are we to negate it or ridicule it or make fun of it? A human organism which is healthy, as I described here, with a normal energy balance, a human organism which is healthy will manifest only good qualities in accordance to the laws of nature. Such person will not be prone to biopathies, and as Rach said, will have a Christ-like qualities, like Jesus Christ-like qualities. He will be unable to lie. He will have compassion toward the others. In orgonomic terms, he will have ability to develop orgonomic contact. In psychoanalytic terms, he will be able to have projective identification based upon his own healthy structure. In psychoanalysis, projective identification means that you project what you feel to the others and identify with it. But in orgonomy, we call it orgonomic contact, the contact of the energy. He will be incapable of sadistic acts and will have rational thinking. He will be receptive to discussions and will shun destructive social activities. His goals and motives will be socially oriented, and he will strive to improve his own life and help others too. Physically, such a person will have a strong, well-integrated, coordinated body functions with healthy tissues and high immunity to illnesses. Our clinical observation reflects that when under organ therapy, restrictions to the organ flow, to the organ energy movement is removed and dissolved, sadistic and destructive impulses evaporate, disappear. Now, it is not that the person becomes aware of his sadistic actions and then is able to fight against it and handles it. The sadistic impulse disappears altogether. Now, everyone knows that it is better not to have some negative or sadistic impulse than to have it and fight against it. So, this is the difference. Now that we talked about healthy organism, what should be, let's talk about what then distorts this healthy organism and makes the organism sick. In other words, now we are in the second year of medical school talking about pathology. What causes the illness? From the orgonomic point of view, when orderly flow of biological energy becomes impeded and distorted, a wide range of psychological and physical illnesses manifests itself. Dr. Rach, in the book Rach Speaks of Freud, says, what are the social consequences of libido theory? You have it in all my publications, which is Rach. I would like to summarize it in few words. If you have a stream, a natural stream, you must let it stream. If you dam up somewhere, it goes over the banks. That's all. Now, when the natural streaming of bioenergy is dammed up, it also it spills over, resulting irrationality, perversions, neurosis, and so on. Now, what do you have to do to correct this? You must get the stream back to its normal bed and let it flow naturally again. That's quite a lot of change in education, infant upbringing, family life. These are the social consequences. And somehow here, Freud couldn't follow me. You remember that he said that he was disappointed in Freud, because after Freud himself discovered this structure, the energy principle, libido principle, and that when this flow of energy is blocked, it causes neurosis and illness, he refrained from facing the social conditions that causes this blocking. Actually, Rach, in the book of, I think it's Rach Speaks of Freud, says that when I told Freud that, listen, this is your theory, I am just making conclusion out of it, that if this is because of the illness, then you have to change social conditions to not to have this illness. At that time, Freud was becoming a Jewish grandfather and saying that, no, culture takes precedence. Culture takes precedence. Now, that is the culture who also causes genocide. So Reich says that he was not seeing the problems that culture causes, culture produces it. So to describe the psychological and physical effects of disturbance of flow of energy in an orderly manner, let's go to our familiar diagram in orgonomy, psychosomatic functioning, and describe the unity as well as the antithetical nature of psyche and soma. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is the famous, the RAS program. This, okay, well, this is the core, that bioenergetic core, and the energy flows, and then here changes to psyche and soma. So yes, so this is biosystem that energy flows, and then it branches to both psychic and somatic area. So in depth they are having same root. Now any changes, every lasting energy stasis in biological system A, any changes that happens in this biological system A, any lasting energetic problem, manifests itself either in the psychological area or somatic area, physical area, or both. It can also affect both. At present time, the most important pathology that has been discovered, which impedes and disturbs the flow of biological energy in the orderly manner in the human organism, is emotional and muscular armoring. Armor is defined as the organism's defense structure consisting of emotional and physical rigidities expressed by chronic muscular spasm and characterological incarcerations, which functions as a defense against emotional expressions, primarily love, anxiety, rage, and sexual excitations. Armoring develops during the child's interaction with his or her environment, which harshly represses the child's expression of those primary impulses. Children initially protest these inhibitions, most imposed on them by crying and throwing a temper tantrum, but eventually they submit to the pressure for their own survival needs, and part of their primary drive disassociates and turns against itself by means of physical or psychological contractions, and these muscular and emotional rigidities over time becomes chronic and permanent. And when environmental condition changes and environmental suppression is lifted, the mechanism of suppression continues by child's own volition from within by established armor. A child that once hated what was done to him continues doing it to himself and then repeats it to the others, even though he hated it in first place as a child. Many of my patients, in fact, have told me, "Doctor, I hated when my father or mother was doing this to me, but I catch myself doing the same thing to my own child." Dr. Morton Herskovich once said that emotional armoring is one of the most important discoveries in the history of psychiatry, and which is really has gone unnoticed, and conventional psychiatry knows nothing about it and does not, address it. But we clinically see in orgonomy, the armored and unarmored organism is schematically depicted like this. Can I have the next slide, please? This is an unarmored organism, that the energy from core is able to express itself uninhibited. So the impulse is able to show itself uninhibited. Of course, we not always let our anger or our expression shows itself. Temporarily we can contain it, but it's a temporary containing. It's not permanent. But once armor is established, then even the person wants to express itself, it becomes unable to. In fact, Dr. Reich, actually Dr. Herskovich once told me that Reich, when he was analyzing one of his patients, walked into the room and told to the doctor that was his student and analyzing, he says that, doctor, you have a mask on your face, like an armor on your face. And that patient told Dr. Reich that, yes, Dr. Reich, you have a mask too. And Dr. Reich says, yes, but mask does not have me. So, in a way, you know, that's the difference. This is the unarmored structure. And may I have the next one? Oh, this is the armored one. Once an armor is established as a chronic inhibition of the muscular or the psychological way of the person is fighting against and becomes a permanent, then the impulses is unable to show itself as it is and becomes changed. If this is an impulse of love or affection, sometimes changes to becoming a hate, you know, to anger. So the impulses becomes change the primary impulse to a secondary one and shows in a different way. And this structure of the armor is not a simple structure. It is interaction of different forces. Oh, here, can I go there? Okay, yeah, that's the complexity of an armor, because one impulse sometimes has another impulse is against it, then another impulse, there are layers. So the outcome then shows itself in a very distorted way from the primary impulse. So our job is that to dissolve this armor and let the primary impulse to show itself if the person wants to show it, to become capable of showing it.
Dr. Simonian,
Yes, dear.
can I ask you a question?
Sure, definitely.
Again, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. Will biofeedback help?
Well, I don't know biofeedback. I don't work with it. This is the technique that I know is what Reich suggested, that how to work and gradually eliminate this armor. And that's both psychologically and physically. And in a few minutes I'll get there. Okay. But I'm sorry I can't comment on biofeedback because I'm not knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking the question.
Stephan, I might say, I think biofeedback helps sometimes people sense their bodies, which otherwise often is very difficult for people, which is a consequence of the armoring. Because when we don't feel ourselves, both physically as well as emotionally, it becomes very difficult to fix anything. So yes, biofeedback to some extent helps a person sense muscle tensions or their bodies at all. And that is basically also necessary and happens in psychiatric oral therapy because the body is directly affected in the process of therapy. That helps.
Now, the structure of armor is not a simple one, as I said. The structure of armor consists of interplay of many dynamic forces complement each other. The armor becomes a pathological base of many different psychological and physical illnesses because it prevents the flow of organ energy in an orderly manner and it distorts the primary impulse. Dr. Reich named this wide variety of illnesses as biopathies. The term he describes this way. The term biopathy is specific to orgonomy and it is defined all disease processes caused by basic dysfunction in autonomic life apparatus. Reich says, once it starts, this dysfunction can manifest itself in variety of symptoms, in a variety of symptomatic disease patterns. The biopathy can result in carcinoma, but it can just as easily lead to angina pectoris, asthma, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, epilepsy, catatonic or paranoid schizophrenia, anxiety neurosis, multiple sclerosis, chorea, chronic alcoholism, etc. We are still ignorant of the factors that determines the direction in which biopathy will develop. Of prime importance, however, is the common denominator of all these diseases, a disturbance in natural function of pulsation in the total organism. Now, constant production of energy from inside and inadequate discharge of biological energy because of the presence of armor in some patients have subjective feeling of exploding from within or feeling as if their head is going to explode. I have patients who told they were desperate, they thought that their head will explode or they will explode. Because of the armor inhibits the flow of energy, sometimes patients feel a sense of numbness in their skin or part of their body. Sometimes they lacerate, they cut their skin to make sure that it exists, to see the blood come out, so they know that it's dead. Sometimes they lacerate their skin to make sure that they exist, because there's no feeling there. By blocking the bioenergetic movement or by extinguishing the movement, the person gets the feeling of deadness or numbness. The numbness is subjective feeling of the perception of objective organ immobility. In other words, when there is no energy movement, the person feels numb or dead. One schizophrenic patient of mine, I had a schizophrenic patient who, there are many examples, but some of them stays in my mind. One patient was calling me different times of the time at night and was in a frightened state and was telling me that, doctor, my hand is turning to stone and I'm afraid that it will fall off or break and fall off, or different parts of her body. Because, a schizophrenic patient produces some bizarre symptoms. A clinician who is not aware of these principles of orgonomy, for him it will be crazy. The guy says, "Why I'm turning stone?" What is? But once you know what is happening behind it, then you will develop more understanding about that patient. For example, this patient, I knew that's because of the block of the energy. Once you understand the patient, you have more compassion toward the patient. And for some reason, it has better therapeutic effect. Somehow the patient gets healed once someone understands him and responds that way. The numbness is the subjective perception of objective organ immobility in an affected area. So the armor also changes the initial impulse. The armor also changes the initial impulse, the primary impulse, into the so-called secondary impulse, as I showed you. Now, biophysical model. See, there is for example, in psychoanalysis, there is a model of conscious and unconscious, or ego, superego is a model that psychoanalysts use. Now, in the orgonomy, the biophysical structural model, the model that we go, based on the human structure, as Dr. Reich suggested, is core, middle layer, and periphery. as I showed here. Dr. Reich, in the book Mass Psychology of Fascism, states, the extensive and painstaking therapeutic work on human character has led me to conclusion that as a rule, we are dealing with three different layers in biopsychic structure in evolution of human reaction. The surface layer, on the surface layer, his personality of the average person on the surface layer is reserved, polite, cooperative, compassionate, and conscientious. This is on the surface layer. There would be no social tragedy of human animals if this surface layer of personality were in direct contact with the deeper natural core. This, unfortunately, is not the case. The surface layer of social cooperation is not in contact with deep biological core of selfhood. It is born by a secondary intermediate character layer which consists exclusively of cruel, sadistic, lewd, greedy, and envious impulses. It represents the Freudian unconscious, or what is repressed. To put it in the language of sex economy, it represents some total of social secondary drives. Organ biophysics made it possible to comprehend the Freudian unconscious, that which is antisocial in man, is secondary result of repression of primary biological urges. If one penetrates to this destructive second layer deep into biological substratum of human animal, one always discovers the third deeper layer, which we call it biological core. In this core, under favorable social conditions, man is essentially honest, industrious, cooperative, loving, and if motivated, hating animal too. Now, as you see, according to Orgonomy, the core, if you can penetrate from surface and the middle layer, that is all that antisocial and destructive forces, to the core, the human being is an industrious and loving animal. But this is not what psychoanalysis understands. Psychoanalysis is unable to penetrate to the deeper biological core. It stops on the unconscious, which is the second layer. That's why Freud, that's based on the Reich, that's what Freud said, that there's a dead instinct. In other words, he misunderstood the distortion of the loving impulse that turns into hate, and put both on the same level, that there is a hate and destructive tatanus, that whatever the dead instinct, and there is a eros, or love instinct. But in fact, this is not the same. That dead instinct is a secondary, is distortion of the primary loving instinct that is deep into the core, coming from the core. Now, I don't want to say that Freud was wrong, because Freud, one of the heroes of the psychiatry, but I'm just saying that what Reich understood and how Reich separated from Freud by his understanding, which I agree. So we talked about what was normal, how the human animal becomes distorted and becomes abnormal by the presence of the armoring. And now I'm going to talk about treatment. Now we are in the third year of medical school that they talk about the treatment. In the book Character Analysis, Dr. Reich says, organ therapy comprises all medical and educational techniques which makes use of biological energy organ. The cosmic organ energy, from which the concept of organ therapy derives, was not discovered until 1939. Yet long before this discovery, the goal of character analysis was conceived as the liberation of psychic energy, as it was called at that time, from the character armor and muscular armor and establishment of orgastic potency. Now in this paragraph, Dr. Rach describes evolution of organ therapy that started from psychoanalysis and went to character analysis and vegetotherapy and then concluded in organ therapy. I guess I have a little time, so I'm going to talk a little bit out of script. Rach describes that once Freud referred the patient to him because the patient had a symptom of sexual impotence. He was feeling emptiness in his genital area. So Rach says that he treated this patient for 3 years. And at that time, psychoanalytic treatment, and he felt in his own genital that there was nothing empty, and it stayed with him. So they reached that. According to psychoanalytic theory, they reached the main traumatic event, and the patient now should get better. But the patient didn't get better. So he presented it to the older analyst, and they said, well, that's it, you are done, and the analysis is final. So he went to the patient and said that, well, listen, that's done. So if you are not improved, then whatever, we can't do anything. So the Rach says that the patient handled this termination of the treatment like anything else he handled in his life. Politely, with politeness, with appreciation, with respect, and thanked him, and then said goodbye, and he handled it everywhere, any other thing in his life that he was coming to. Rach says that then he realized that his real illness was this excessive politeness. He was unable to get angry. He was unable to protest. You know, his illness is his character. So he says that from this he moved into more character analysis. So from psychoanalysis, that is a more symptom analysis, he moved into character, that the character should be addressed, character should be changed. The patient should become able to become angry and express itself. So from psychoanalysis, he moved into character analysis, and for him then it was more important how patient says things rather than what the patient says, because words can lie, but demeanor and attitude usually do not lie. So from there he moved into the character analysis. Rach moved into character, but character has a counterpart of somatic physical expression. A person who always smiles, after a while develops some contractions or some facial attitudes that contraction of the muscle. A person who is always holding the head up as an angry, like macho person, after a while develops some contractions in the muscles of the neck. So character has a physical counterpart, and Rach, after attacking the character, started to also work on the physical contractions and physical attitudes. So he called it vegetotherapy. Why he called it vegetotherapy? Because these muscular contractions in the next step is related to vegetative or autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system controls these involuntary contractions or behavior. So his technique moved from psychoanalysis to character analysis, then to vegetotherapy, then combination of two, because sometimes one doctor can work with the character, sometimes on the muscular or the physical area. So we call that combination as organ therapy. In addition to psychiatric organ therapy, that is combination of character analysis and vegetotherapy, Rach discovered combination of organic and inorganic material which is able to concentrate atmospheric organ energy and can be used in treatment of psychiatric and medical biopathies. It is called organ accumulator. The organ accumulator are built like a box or blanket or some other forms and there are many anecdotal reports of the effectiveness of this treatment of biopathies. There's lots of anecdotal reports. If you put together, it means something. It is important. Now let's say a few words, few minutes. Now let's say a few words about the prevention of emotional and psychiatric armoring, because if you can prevent this armoring, then it's much better than to treat them. So Reich says in the book of Function of Orgasm, Reich says, Freud knew and had set down in writing that mankind is sick. The idea of preventing the neurosis did not exist, nor anyone knew what to say about it. Work in the clinic soon made the following very clear. Neurosis is a mass sickness as infections similar to epidemics. The most important source of neurosis is authoritarian, anti-pleasure, sexually repressive family upbringing. In an attempt to prevent distortion of character structure of children who are the future adults, who are from ergonomic point of view, it is imperative that social and cultural institutions adapt themselves based on children's needs. The ergonomic principle of the health and sickness is important yardstick for such an adaptation. Reich says, I don't believe that there will be any solution to any social problem as long as children and adolescents grow up with stasis of biological energy. You cannot impose freedom on the ruined bioenergetic system of children. And that's why we are here. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.